Timothy DeFoor, Republican for Pennsylvania's Auditor General. Why are you running for this office?
You know, I actually care about our tax dollars. And I'm going to go back to when I was a kid. My parents and my relatives used to always joke about government. They used to talk about government and what government did with their tax dollars. Now, as a kid, I wondered myself. I knew that government did some things, but I knew that it did a lot of things on the federal level. But I always wondered what else did it do. So I kind of knew at a very young age what I wanted to do, but I wanted to do it. Now, no kid dreams of being an auditor.
That is an unusual aspiration for a youngster. I got to give you that.
Exactly. But I knew that I wanted to be in law enforcement and to investigate individuals who were misusing taxpayer dollars, or in some cases actually stealing or being fraudulent with taxpayer dollars. And I was very fortunate to do that, starting off with the State Office of the Inspector General, where I investigated government fraud, waste, and abuse, and then ultimately going to the Pennsylvania Office of the Attorney General.
So talk about Inspector General just for a minute and tell us about the kind of work you did there and maybe a specific case you worked on.
Well, so there are several cases that I worked on with the Office of the Inspector General. At the time, that's when the Inspector General had satellite offices at the larger state departments. So I started out with the PennDOT, or the Transportation Satellite Office, where we would investigate allegations of fraud, waste, and abuse with regards to PennDOT. So I was there for a short time. Then I was pulled away on a special assignment where I went undercover at then they called them Centers for the Mentally Retarded. I went to a center outside of Philadelphia in Chester, where there was a number of unexplained incidents and injuries to residents that were there. So my job was to work there as an aide, and I worked there as an aide where I basically took
So you applied for a job, they gave it to you, you were undercover, as you said.
I was undercover, correct, and to see if injuries and residents were being abused. And if I would see an abuse, then I had a pencil and paper in my socks. I'd go into the bathroom, write down the abuse, and then go back and put it in the log. As a result, 3 people were arrested for abusing the mentally retarded.
So you did see some serious things.
Yes, and that was the first time in the history of Penn. And I don't talk about I don't talk about it that often. And that was the first time that somebody was arrested for abusing somebody in a state-run institution. Oddly enough, I'm recruited by the Attorney General's office. And as a result of my investigation and another investigation, there was a law that came out. The law was Act 120, Neglect of a Care-Dependent Person. And what the law stated was if you abuse somebody that you are being paid to take care of, then you're charged with neglect of a care-dependent person. So I then go to the Attorney General's office, and I'm the first law enforcement officer in the history of Pennsylvania to arrest and prosecute somebody under that new law. So my entire career has been looking after government tax dollars. And even though I investigated allegations of fraud, waste, and abuse in government and their contractors, in addition to the people who are being injured, I also care about government. Because government, at least for a family like when I was a kid, government helped us, government looked after us, and I wanted to make sure that government was doing the right thing. So that's something that was very, very important to me, and that's why I've been with government or been involved with government for my entire 30-plus year career.
So let's find out more about your current position, and you are the current Auditor General of Pennsylvania. So just tell us in basic terms, what do you do as Auditor General?
In a nutshell, anywhere where there's state funds that are being spent, whether it's a State Department or whether it's being an entity that's doing work for the state or has a contract with the state. My job is to make sure that they are doing their job.
And try to give us an example.
For example, if the state uses funds to support a program, and the program could be a program for anything, then whoever receives those funds, they're supposed to do certain things with it. The first thing they're supposed to do is to make sure that whatever program they have is working. And there are processes in place for that, something that I like to refer to as internal controls. And the internal controls are basically how you are to operate. Think of it as an instruction book. So they have their internal controls, they have their instruction book. And my job is to make sure that they're following that. If they're not, or if we go in and we perform an audit, and if they're not doing it, then we put that in an audit report, identify what the problems are, but come up with a common sense solution on how to fix the problem. And then that report could go to whoever is responsible for that entity or to that group, or it could go to the governor and the legislature. Because another aspect of my job is to inform the governor, inform members of the House and Senate, mostly appropriation members, on how Commonwealth funds are being spent. So my job is not only to audit, but also to inform others of how Commonwealth funds are being spent.
And when you recommend action, is that mandated in any cases when the Auditor General says this has to be corrected or addressed? Something has to happen?
Not necessarily. And that's one of the frustrating parts. Because throughout the years, if you look at some of the audits that we've done, and sometimes politics sometimes gets involved, a lot of times that doesn't happen, but a lot of times that does happen. It happens in some of our bigger audits. Like, for example, when we did our audit of the Pennsylvania Turnpike, where we identified that one of the reasons why the Turnpike is in such debt, it isn't necessarily because of them. It's because of a bad piece of legislation where they had to end up giving money to the Department of Transportation. But we also identified that there were individuals who received a bill because of the toll by plate, individuals who received the bill, but they wouldn't pay the bill. So as a result of our audit, the legislature created a bill, and the governor signed a bill saying that, okay, if you have this much that you owe to the Turnpike, then your registration is going to be suspended. So that's a case where something that we did in our audits, it worked.
Now, which other departments or agencies do you audit on a regular basis? You told us about the Turnpike, but what about some of these other departments and agencies? And I'm guessing some of them are large.
Pretty much. All the larger state ones. All of them. Think about it this way. There are 9,000 entities that we are responsible for auditing. There are 3,700 audits that we produce a year. About close to 90% of the audits that we perform are statutory required. So although one of the things that we don't do is, especially when you look at some of the largest departments, we don't take them on as a whole, because that audit would last 10 years. So what we do, we look at certain programs. It could be a program that we've audited in the past. We could get a request from the legislature. We could get a request from the governor's office, or we could get a request from a private citizen or some other group saying that there's a problem in this area. We'll look at it, and if we do...
Can someone give you a tip and remain anonymous?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And the way that they can do that, they can either call into the office, or they can just simply go on our website, which is paauditor.gov. And that has happened a few times.
And as far as accountability is concerned, often nowadays people talk about transparency, and making government transparent is desirable. That seems to be an aspect of accountability.
Absolutely. That's our reality. That's our reality. Our reality is to make sure that, number one, government and those receiving funds from government are transparent with government funds, because that's the law. You have to be transparent with government funds. But also make sure that you're doing the right thing with it. So as far as being transparent,
money is supposed to be spent in a very specific way.
Exactly, and you're supposed to be transparent with it. And so as a part of our audits, that's one of the things that we're looking at. If a agency, state agency, or a group or an entity that is using state funds if they're not transparent with government tax, with citizen tax dollars, then that's something that we're going to report in our audit report. You absolutely have to be transparent.
Now, how big a staff does the Auditor General oversee here in Pennsylvania?
Right now, we have a staff, including administration, of about 390. Several years ago,
Any increases or cutbacks in recent years?
We did have some cutbacks during my first year, but the staff that we cut back, we rehired. But also, we've been extremely aggressive with regards to recruiting and also retaining staff. We visited, when I say we, myself as well, visited all 14 PASI schools, all 4 state-related schools. Most of the community colleges, I'm in the process of finishing a tour of the community colleges, and we now have career opportunities for students in community colleges as well. But going to the 4-year schools and community college, recruiting not only accounting students, but it could be business students, it could be a data analytics student, it could be a finance student, IT, talking about career opportunities within the Department of the Auditor General. So what we would like to do, we would like to definitely beef up our staff, because right now, even though 390 seems like a lot, at one point, the Department of the Auditor General had almost 1,000 employees.
Now, are they all auditors in your employ?
No.
Is this something you get certified to be, by the way?
So as far as an auditor, we like for our auditors to become certified. It's not a requirement to be certified, but if you're not certified, then you're going to probably come in as an auditor 1 or an auditor 2. But one of the things that we would like you to do is continue your education. And when I say continue education, whether it's going to get a master's degree or complete your 4-year degree, but also we would like you to become a certified public accountant, certified internal auditor, or a certified fraud examiner.
Now, I know your department does several different kinds of audits, and the one that seems to capture the interest of the public and the news media is the performance audit. So why not tell us what's involved there and the boxes that have to be checked when you're doing such an audit?
And it's the performance audit, it's pretty much in the name. How are these entities performing with tax dollars? Are you, in fact, doing what you're supposed to do with the funds that you're receiving through the Commonwealth? And you're right, it's the performance audits are the ones that get most of the headlines. As I said before, about 80-90% of our audits are statutorily required to do. A lot of times those aren't the ones getting the headlines. It's the performance ones, because the performance ones are pretty much all across the board. It could be anything. It could be something with regards to a school district, and we just did the pharmacy an audit of pharmacy benefit managers. That was a performance audit, and also with regards to the bridge inspections for PennDOT, that was also a performance audit. So even though we may be auditing entities that we are statutorily required to do, depending on what we do, depends on whether it's going to be a performance audit or some other type of audit, because we do different types of audits. We do, first and foremost, financial, and that's in the name. The audit is in the name in itself. Is the financial information that the Commonwealth or a specific department using, is that information correct? And attestation engagement. Attestation engagement is let's say that we are approached by a member of the Superior Administration, and they say, well, we want you to take a look at this and this. Then that's an agreed upon set of procedures. So that would be an attestation engagement. Then so we do some compliance audits. Even though we're not a compliance department, the compliance audits that we do it because we are statutorily required to do these audits. And those could be audits of pension plans, and we were talking about that a few minutes ago, about some concerns that I have with regards to pension plans.
Yes.
And volunteer fire relief associations. So those are compliance audits that we are statutory required to do. And then you have the performance audits.
Tell me more about the Firefighter Relief Association, what that is and what that money is supposed to be spent on.
Yeah, so firefighter relief audits, what they are is volunteer firefighter relief associations are given a percentage of fire insurance funds that are written by out-of-state insurance companies. So they're given a percentage of that, and they're giving a percentage of that so they could buy equipment, training. If there's any benefits that need to be paid out to, let's say, an unfortunate fallen volunteer firefighter, benefits for those, and we are given those funds to disperse.
So Auditor General releases this money to them.
We release it, and then we are in a unique role of also auditing those funds as well. And as a matter of fact, we're about to release and probably have a press conference or a press release in the next few weeks with regards to us dispersing those funds.
And how dependent are these associations on you releasing these funds? In other words, if you didn't release the funds, where would they get the money?
They'd be in trouble. They would have to find some other way, some other agency, maybe DCED, or they'd be in trouble. So they rely on it. They rely on it, and I know this through conversations that we have with them, meetings that we've had with them. We've gone across the state, listening to volunteer firefighters talking about their concerns. So these are funds that they actually need to buy new equipment, and for training as well.
Now, you mentioned that a lot of the audits you do are required. Does that mean they're on a regular timetable? In other words, the department or program sees you coming at the same time?
Yeah. So what normally audits are on a 2 or a 4 year audit schedule. So we started looking at that, and we started looking at, okay, how can we improve that? Because sometimes when you look at 2 to 4 years, that may seem like a ways off, and we wanted to do something that was a little more quicker and up to date. So we started
more frequency.
More frequency. So what we started doing, we introduced some things that they're currently doing in the private sector, auditing best practice, limited procedure engagements, and reduced period engagements. And basically, what those do, you're auditing based on risk and vulnerabilities, which means that if you have all the information on these entities, and if you look at the information and look at past audit results, there may be no risk with a particular pension plan or a particular volunteer fire relief association. So you may do a report, but you may not necessarily do a full-blown audit. But if you look at another one and you identify by doing a risk assessment that there is high risk with regards to this volunteer fire company, then you do a full-blown audit. And one of the things that does, it cuts down on the it gives you the opportunity to audit the ones that need help more frequently, like possibly once a year or once every 2 years, as opposed to every 2 years or every 4 years. Just auditing based on risk and vulnerabilities. So we just completed the pilot project, and in addition to doing it that way, we've cut off months of doing some of those audits.
And now, as far as the public is concerned and reading about what your office is accomplishing, tell me about an accomplishment that was really out there for the public, and it really made them aware of what you were doing at the Auditor General's office, probably gratifying for you. Now, you already told us about the Turnpike. Anything else come to mind?
Pharmacy benefit managers.
And what was at issue with the pharmacy benefit managers?
So the main issue was, number one, was the Department of Human Services monitoring the contracts and monitoring the pharmacy benefit managers. And number two, were there hidden fees that pharmacy benefit managers were charging to pharmacies but not disclosing to the Department of Human Services or managed care organizations. And we found out that to be true. And that is going to have a tremendous impact, especially on the mom and pop pharmacies. Those are the ones who are hurting. And we were just at an independent pharmacy in Scranton, in the Scranton area. And initially we thought that because of what's happening then because of the high rates that they're being charged by pharmacy benefit managers, we initially thought that 150 independent pharmacies that had closed this year. It's closer to 200. So there seems to be so because of these fees, the independent pharmacies are hurting. But the thing that is troubling to me, and I'm going to go back to what we talked about earlier, is the transparency. They were not being transparent with regards to what they were doing. These are still, and this is with regards to Medicaid. So these are government funds.
Yes.
So no matter how you spin it, if you are charging a independent pharmacy a certain fee for Medicaid recipients,
it concerns you.
It concerns me. It concerns the citizens. And what's happening because of, like, you could have a pharmacy in a rural community that services mostly Medicaid and Medicare. Mm-hmm. And because of these high fees, they're going out of business. And after they go out of business, the people who need their medication, where are they going to go? In some cases, they have to drive 15 miles to a Rite Aid or to another pharmacy in order to get their prescription drugs.
And even some of the major pharmacies are closing.
Especially in the rural and some rural and some urban areas. And some people don't have transportation to get there. I mean, they could, in some instances, you have a lot of mom-and-pop pharmacies that would deliver. I don't think CVS, Rite Aid, or Walgreens is going to deliver. So where are these people going to go to get their life-saving medications? They may have to spend an entire day or find a way to get to a pharmacy just to get their life-sustaining medication. And
so
that's
what kind of recommendations did your office make to help remedy this situation?
Pharmacy benefit managers, be transparent. Be transparent. The Department of Human Services, they have to monitor
It's merely a recommendation, though, General. I want to make sure that's clear.
Exactly. It's merely a recommendation. The Department of Human Services has to monitor their managed care organizations and the contracts of pharmacy benefit managers. Now, all this with regards to pharmacy benefit managers started in 2018 in the state of Ohio, where they've exposed a lot. And the numbers that the state of Ohio had were a lot higher than ours. So they went back a few years. And since then, other states, I know Illinois, Kentucky, and other states are looking really hard at what the pharmacy benefit managers are doing. Pennsylvania needs to start doing the same thing.
Now let's get into the campaign here, General. We've spent a lot of time talking about the responsibilities and some specific cases and audits you've performed. So as far as the campaign is concerned, how do you get voters involved? How do you get them excited? How do you get them to sign on in this election for Auditor General?
We're talking to them. I mean, it all starts with a conversation. And, you know, it's kind of like you have other races that are way up here that get a lot of attention. And then you have House races that are way up here that get a lot of attention. And you may have some state rural officers that get a lot of attention. The Auditor General's down here. So, and I have to, and you know, and I was a certified internal auditor. So I'm an auditor. So you know, sometimes auditing doesn't necessarily excite people, but you have to make people aware of the importance of what you do. Auditing, as far as the duties and responsibilities, is a subject matter expert. So I view myself, and when I go out and talk to people, I view myself as the subject matter expert to make sure that your tax dollars are being spent the way they're supposed to be spent. So it starts with a conversation. And one of the things that I've done, you know, in my role as Auditor General, but also on the campaign trail, it's pretty much the same message. This is what the Auditor General does. This is why it's important. Think of me as your subject matter expert when it comes to auditing.
And when they want more information on this subject, do they have a chance to talk back to you? You said you're talking to the voters.
Absolutely.
I want to know if they're asking you questions, and what are they?
Absolutely. So a lot of the questions they may be with regards to a particular subject, local government.
Would you consider looking into Organization X?
Right, exactly. And some of them, depending on the answer, we may already be looking into it. But if we're looking into something, I can't get into the specifics of what we're looking into. Others, they may have to go to their local government, because if it's just local taxes, then that's not something that we do. Or even if it's like county taxes, it's something that we don't do. One of the things that we do, we have a certain set of rules that we have to follow, and it's dealing with state taxes. We can only audit where state tax dollars are being spent, or if the federal government gives Pennsylvania funds, and those funds are then given to go through the state treasurer's office, we can audit that. But we can't audit federal funds that would go straight to somebody or to a local government. That would be the federal office of the Inspector General, who would be responsible for that. But a lot of them, it's with their local governments. And I would give them advice as much as I possibly can. But yeah, those are most of the questions that I get.
We have about 2 minutes left in our program, General. So use that remaining time to tell our voters why they should vote for you in November.
I'm an auditor, and I've been doing this type of work for my entire career.
Does that mean some of your opponents are not auditors, by the way?
Yes, that's exactly what that means. And if you are not an auditor, how can you truly lead? Because you don't understand the work that's being done. If you don't understand the work that's being done, you can win an election, but you can't effectively lead the department. And I mean, been an auditor for a long time, and prior to that I was a law enforcement officer, all with the same skill set. So I've been at this for 30 plus years, and I think I've become pretty good at it. And I like I like doing the things, the work that the Auditor General is traditionally supposed to do, and that's what I'm going to stick with.
Timothy DeFoor, Republican for Pennsylvania's Auditor General, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.